Okay, so my name is Dr. Rachel O'Connell, and I'm founder and CEO of Trust Elevate. And our mission is to try and create a safer internet for children and young people. And we do that by enabling social media, gaming, streaming, messaging apps, any platform that processes kids' data. They're legally obliged to know the ages of their users, and for very young users like 4-year-olds or 8-year-olds, to obtain consent from the authorized holder of parental responsibility for a child, right? So they have to get consent from the parent to process data. We're the only company globally that verifies under 18's ages, and we verify parental responsibility for a child, right? So our mission applies not only just to online, but like, think about each time as a parent, you have to verify that you are the parent of the child. When you open a bank account, when you take your kids to the doctor, after school club, swimming, right? There's all situations where you have to sign consent forms. And in the bank, you have to bring ID documents in with you. So what we want to do is streamline that whole process for online and offline. So in your digital wallet on your phone, you will be able to prove that you are the parent of a child. When you're getting a passport, etc. Right? There's multiple scenarios. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do. My background, my PhD, my doctoral thesis was investigating pedophile activity on the internet and looking at the implications for investigative strategies. So I analyzed over 100 hours of child abuse videos and worked with law enforcement. I then I set up the first internet safety centers funded by the European Commission, and managed like 19 of them across Europe. And we were like trying to do the flip side. How do you educate kids and those responsible for their care, right? So that they're equipped with the tools and kind of knowledge and skills. And I worked within industry as the chief safety officer for Bebo, a social networking platform. And so I set up and was responsible for the abuse management systems. You would not believe what kids are exposed to, like content that promotes eating disorder, self-harm, suicidal ideation. It's like honestly, it's very bad. So worked with mental health organizations to get them to deliver their services online, so we could triage the kids that, said, I can't stop self-harming or I can't stop purging. We could direct them to the right sorts of help and support. And then the last 14 years have been in the digital identity space, trying to crack that, what people said was the unsolvable problem. There's no way to verify ages. I was told that, and I'm this type of person, when you say you can't do something, I want to do it, I will make it happen. So that's kind of the backdrop to Trust Elevate. That's what we're trying to do, is affect change. So we're working at the moment with the United Nations. So industry says, well, you can't solve this problem, because what about unaccompanied child asylum seekers? What about children in care? What about kids with parents who are neglectful? So we're working with the United Nations Office, the High Commissioner for Refugees. There's 118 million displaced families around the world. They have a database, right? So what seems like initially a really difficult, when you dig down a little bit, you go, oh, actually, and children in care have to go to school, and they go to swimming lessons, and they go to it's what's called a corporate authorized, it's really somebody appointed, it's a social worker, but there is an authorized holder of parental responsibility for them. So we're working on the technical standard and also working on the policy document that enables those organizations to know what to do, right? So so what we've been doing is working towards creating a marketplace. We are so thrilled to be part of We Transact, right? Because we are now educating resellers, right? Obviously, it's resellers who already have on the Microsoft Azure platform, that already have connections with the sectors. So our solution applies horizontally across sectors. So it's basically anybody processing children's data and under 18's data. So I mentioned social media, gaming, streaming, edtech, but it's also banks and fintechs. We enable digital onboarding of child and teen bank accounts, which you cannot do right now. You physically have to go into the bank with your ID documents, somebody eyeball you and say how likely it is that this is the parent of a child. Now, Ava, my daughter, has a different surname to me, and she looks like her dad. I'm more, well, now she looks more like me, but at the time she looked more like a dad. So when I moved to the UK, they were like, you're arriving with this giant Irish birth certificate. We've never seen anything like that. We're not opening a bank account for you, right? It's ridiculously difficult. So we streamline that whole process. And also for companies like Revolut and, open loop prepaid cards, they legally should verify that the prepaid cards they get issued for their kids are actually their kids. And because there's a loophole and there's not a way to do that until Trust Elevate, you've got a load of money muling and fraud happening, right? So we're combating fraud. Then think about pharma companies that are running clinical trials and medtech companies that are developing new technologies. Kids' heart rate beats faster and their respirations are faster than us as adults. They metabolize drugs in a completely different way to us. It's much faster, and it can change their body pH and have impacts on them at a much faster rate than it does in us as adults. So we enable pharma companies that are conducting clinical trials and medtech companies to obtain consent from the authorized holder of parental responsibility for a child. Yeah, so partnering with Microsoft, I'm trying to convince them to use our service, right? Because you have Microsoft, Google, and Apple, you've got family safety tools. And right now, if you go through, it can take you up to 90 minutes to get all the way through, because it doesn't tell you that you can't use your work email, and then you're like, and then you have to go back to the start, but they don't verify the relationship between the parent and the child. It's all based on I assume if somebody's go through the pain of setting up family safety tools, they're probably the parent, right? And if they say that their kid's 10 years old, the kid's probably 10 years old. But the problem with that is that if Google did proper checks at the App Store level and Apple did proper checks, then every app, when they realize this is a kid's phone, this Apple account is associated with the kid, they would just surface the apps that are age appropriate for the kid. And that would streamline the whole process of the apps knowing what content to surface for the kids and how to do. It would be transformative, absolutely transformative. But because they don't do proper checks, we are still in a situation where, it's kind of like if you go to a big amusement park, right, with those giant roller coasters, if you're only so high, you can only go on the kids' roller coaster. You cannot get on the big roller coaster, right? So if Apple, Google, and Microsoft did the checks at their higher level, then that would make things a lot easier. You'd streamline those kids to the appropriate experiences. And then that would mean that the platforms would need to alter the parameters of their AI that recommend. So right now the AI engagement goes, here's a bunch of guys that likes watching 11-year-old blonde-haired girls. Let's connect those automatically to those girls. I was like, what? It's harmful, right? So those tech-enabled harms would be reduced significantly. Working with Microsoft would be transformative for us, right? And working with Microsoft Azure, and most importantly, working with WeTransact, because WeTransact have absolutely simplified that whole process. We would not have been able to navigate. I think you'd need a degree on Microsoft Azure to navigate through it, right? I mean, it's not, you're just like, what's going on? So I think WeTransact is brilliant. I want to leverage, I have no ego about Trust Elevate's logo or whatever. I'm just saying I want to work with resellers, systems integrators, people who already, I want our service to be wrapped into as part of the, systems integrators work with various RegTech companies to provide an overall solution to them. So that's what I see the marketplace as, our go-to-market strategy, and it creates a sales pipeline for us that it's really great. Those relationships are already established, and it builds, because nobody gets fired for using, in the old days they used to say nobody gets fired for using IBM, right? So if we're working with the big systems integrators and we're part of the thing, then there's less questions about how advanced is this company, because they know that the systems integrators will have done the due diligence on us. So that reduces the amount of due diligence and the number of times that we have to do that. So that expedites the whole process of our go-to-market strategy. From a commercial perspective, we are working with WeTransact. Johan very kindly has been holding our hands and helping us. So he introduced us to PAX 8, for example. They're a platform for MSPs, managed service providers, that will sell our independent software vendors, our product and service to their clients. So what we're doing right now is that we're developing pre-sales education material to educate resellers, because a lot of people just go, RegTech is probably a bit boring. I don't, they don't want to, they don't see it as tech necessarily, they see it as compliance. So we're trying to help the resellers understand that this is actually really, really important, and the revenue opportunities in terms of working, like we're working with Avande, they're a global systems integrator. So wrapping our service in will mean that their clients massively reduce their regulatory exposure, because you've got an increasing number of regulations like the Digital Services Act that require companies to exercise a duty of care towards all users, but specifically children and young people. And a duty of care can be operationalized into like a child rights impact assessment. So the decisions that companies make in terms of their products and services and the technologies like Trust Elevate that they use to comply with regulations, that's a risk management decision that they will have to audit, right, and be held accountable for. They reached out to us and said, hey, we think you're a good fit for WeTransact. I explained some of the stuff that we do. They were like, we like your mission and we like your approach. And then it's been a kind of hand-holding exercise in terms of helping us to understand. I wasn't familiar with MSPs and how they operated. I've learned an awful lot, and they facilitated that and made me feel like no question was a stupid question, because ultimately I'm trying to increase the knowledge, and then facilitated the connections with various companies that could sell our products and services. So, and I believe maybe sat in on a couple of the meetings as well. So that has been hugely helpful for us. It's not only in terms of helping us raising our visibility, it's facilitating those vital connections, facilitating the conversations, helping us to understand, connecting us with the right people who understand what our proposition is and who can advise us on what we need to do for next steps to really kind of launch this. And the thing that I think WeTransact understand is that in a RegTech, in a regulation tech environment, you can get away with, companies can get away with being this much compliant until a better technology comes along, and then they need to it's like the rising tide that raises all boats. So we have the potential to go from a tiny startup to a unicorn, if that, like there's huge growth potential there. And WeTransact have helped us to understand more, coached us, made the introductions, and continue to guide us. I want to hit the goal of making a sale of 100,000 and then becoming a recognized Microsoft ISV, and then the people that we sell to get credits and benefits. So I basically want to scale the business, right, and really maximize our presence, and really, because we're a horizontal solution, make sure that we optimize reaching out to health sciences, banking, fintech, and the recreational, social media, gaming kind of sectors. So making sure that we get our messaging right, that we're talking to the right systems integrators, that we're formulating the correct relationships, that we're giving enough commission and incentivizing sufficiently, learning what works and what doesn't work, pivoting slightly to make that happen. There are some harder markets to crack, like we're working with folks in India and in Cambodia, where access to data sources, the parent provides us with the child's first name, last name, date of birth, and we need the parent's mobile number. We hash that information and we check it against government and non-government data sources that are also hashed, right? So it's a completely privacy preserving way to check the data. So part of our business involves scaling and getting access to those authoritative data sources. And as we roll out our service, we've also enabled that we can do batch checks to uplift. The name of the company is Trust Elevate, right? We're literally elevating the trust in those relationships that we're verifying and those data points that we're verifying against. So I think partly what I want to do in the future is to explore, and I don't know if this is possible, I want to explore working with the systems integrators in those countries that operate in the countries where we're not present yet and we're not connected to the authoritative data sources, and see if I can leverage the relationships that they have with various stakeholders to make that happen. So I really want to maximize all possible routes to market and stakeholder engagement and commercial opportunities on the platform.